didn't necessarily think that was the best approach to take. Nobody's saying that there aren't some issues we need to talk about and that we need to work on. But I just think that that's something that, as Ambezi said, was sort of a gimme. You know, when you look at the, I guess, the icons of America, the flag is one of them. The, apple pie, the Statue of Liberty, all those things. Those are American things. And all of us love apple pie. All of us love the flag. All of us sing the national anthem and so forth. But the thing that we can never forget, if you're going to be a true constitutionalist, like some folks claim to be, you can't just take bits and pieces of it. It's not an a la carte document.
Right.
That's the problem that I have.
It's not up to your own interpretation. It's pretty black and white.
Well, but it's also not a la carte. So
Right.
I can't say, well, I get the fact. I love the Fourth Amendment because it's got unreasonable searches and seizures and all those types of things. But I'm not so sure if I like all that stuff about you having free speech. That I have a problem with that.
Right. Like you can't pick and choose.
The Constitution is all or none. And so if you're going to be a true constitutionalist, then you need to understand it is what it is. And so the Supreme Court has even upheld people who were burning the flag as a constitutionally protected right of free speech. Now, I would never do that, nor would I condone that. I think that's a horrible thing to do. But the Supreme Court has said that is protected speech. So, you just can't start labeling people as unpatriotic when you're actually doing things that are allowable under this Constitution, because that's why they came here in the first place, is because we want to be free. We want to be able to practice our religion. We want to be able to peaceably assemble. We don't want to have people breaking in, searching our things and seizing our things. And we want to have fair trials and so forth and so on. So you can't have it both ways. But I will say I agree with you, Marvin. I agree with you, Ambezi, Money Marv. I agree that this could have been handled a little bit differently. I certainly applaud the guy for having the fortitude to push that message through in spite of the fact that it cost him his NFL career.
Right.
You can't take anything away from the guy for having that kind of courage, because most people would not have the convictions that, to say, I don't care what it costs me, I'm going to get my message out.
And if you liked it or not, it started a nationwide trend. I mean,
did.
People were doing it at Little League games. Like,
Yep.
it worked, but I just think that somewhere down the road, kind of like Money Marv said, somewhere down the road, it became a constant game of catch up. It became a constant game of explaining ourselves when I don't know how he could have done it, or we don't really have time to shoulda, coulda, woulda, but like that message should have been a little bit stronger before the knee was taken, or as the knee was taken. I feel like if the message was out there as to why it was happening before it started happening, people wouldn't really have room for speculation. People would not have had the opportunity to then spin it out of control.
Agreed. But, again, Ambezi, you certainly hit a great point. And the other thing, but you can't say that Colin Kaepernick and those protesting NFL players are not patriotic.
Oh, not at all, because they just want to see this country be better.
Right, because...
Which is the epitome of being patriotic. It's not like they're saying, people are being killed by the police. I hate America. Forget America. No, they're saying people are being killed by the police. Let's do something about this. Let's make it better.
Sure. And for example, Colin could have certainly stayed away from those socks that he wore that were pretty provocative. Because, again, you don't want anything to distract from your message.
Right.
Particularly when it's a message of equality and a message of, here's a serious issue that we need to talk about that is impacting millions of Americans, because all Americans deserve to be treated fairly. They deserve the opportunity to make a good wage for their families and all those types of things. So it's just wrong to call these guys unpatriotic because we don't know. And again, what makes you more patriotic than me? Is it that I have a taller flag on the front of my house than you do? We eat more apple pie and hot dogs than you do. My dad was in the military 5 years, and your dad was only in for 2 years. I mean, what makes you a patriot? Outside of the obvious things, I want to see someone come in and overthrow our country. That's ridiculous. And yeah, those people need to be dealt with by the appropriate procedures. But just expressing your thoughts.
But if you want to ask me who's unpatriotic, it's the people behind the guns. It's the people doing the shooting. It's the people harassing the people. It's the people who are in these neo-Nazi, Ku Klux Klan. You know how they have down south now they have these civilians who gather up and they take it upon themselves to harass the people at the borders. It's people like that who are unpatriotic. And, you know, unfortunately, we have somebody who has the competence of a Snickers bar in a position of so much power.
But you know what, Ambezi?
But, like, this is my point. You have to really be careful, regardless of what your mental capacity is, regardless of how you feel, when you are in any position of power, no matter what your beliefs are, because there have been plenty of presidents who were very conservative. There have been plenty of presidents who are pretty liberal. But no matter what, when you have the spotlight, you really, really, really have to be more responsible with the words and the things that you choose. Because while there are people who are able to pick out the things that are important and pick out the things that are not, there are people who are die-hard, I am an American, that means I follow my president type people. So when you have a president who's condemning protests to help bring attention to an issue that could potentially make the country better, and when you have somebody who's debunking that and lifting up the fact that there might be good people who are neo-Nazis, that's very, very, very irresponsible. And that is definitely shifting. It's definitely shifting the way that patriotism is being thrown around. And I really don't think that. I really just think that it's just one of those words now that is just being thrown around. It's like, whenever you do something that is not along with the norm of society these days, you're being unpatriotic. And that's just, it's pretty crazy to me. It's really disappointing. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and, like, throw insults and this and that and the third, but it frustrates me because you cannot be in that kind of position and be so irresponsible with your words. Because at the end of the day, you have people who support you, and those are the people that make up this country. Those are a lot of people that make up this country. And when you lead like that, and even if it's just a small amount of people that follow, those are the people who take away from the important messages that we're supposed to be getting from these protests. And it's not only the NFL protests, it's the LGBTQ protests. It's the women getting equal pay protests. It's all of these things. You always have these people trying to call them unpatriotic when really they're just trying to bring light to issues that people feel so strongly about because it's something that's lacking. They just want America to be a better place through these messages.
Well, you raised some good points, and I will say that I'm not necessarily going to put it all on the president. I'm going to give you another.
I don't think it's all on the president, but it definitely does not help that the one person that you're really supposed to look up to when it comes to this idea of patriotism, they're not being the person that you need them to be. That definitely does not help the cause.
Well, let me say this. So, where are the people that disagree with this? And that's where I'm going with this. there are millions of people who disagree with that. Millions. And whether it's 2 million or 4 million, they just don't agree with this. So where are you? Are you going to come out? Are you going to vote? Are you going to do things in your communities to make it better? Or are you going to sit on the sideline with an opinion and not do anything about it? Because the one thing about a bully is that he or she is going to keep picking at you, pick, until you knock them the hell out. So if you're just going to sit around and just take it, that's not on him. If I was a bully and I could just come over here, Amber, every day and take your lunch money, I'm going to take it every day until you knock me out or until you make it so that I'm not comfortable doing it.
And I just think that the problem that I see in protests today, I even see this. I'm going to use Black Lives Matter as an example. When Black Lives Matter first started, it was very, very, very commendable because they were speaking out against the police brutality and things like that. But it began to be one of those things where, yes, you did have Trayvon Martin that was gunned down unjustly. And you did have a lot of other cases like that. But what began to happen was it kind of started, and correct me if I'm wrong, it started kind of getting thrown around irresponsibly. You had black kids that were not even black kids. You had black people who were getting in trouble with the law, who might have been shot, who might have had a bad run-in with the police, who actually were at fault. And people would just scream Black Lives Matter before even getting to know the facts. And then when the facts come out that, this person is at fault, that starts to debunk that starts to really, really, really make the movement have less of an effect. So I really think that that's one of the problems with protests today, especially in the age of social media. Once you make something a hashtag,
sure,
and once you want to bring things to light with that hashtag, what ends up happening is people can start throwing that around and throwing that in the mix without having all the information and without consulting with certain people and without connecting with who they need to connect with. And now all of a sudden it falls apart. Now all of a sudden it's like, all right, well, you lost your credibility because now you're starting to protest something that you didn't have the facts on, and now it comes out that you're wrong.
Sure. Well, I hear you, and Money Marvin, we're going to give you the last word on the NFL protest. And I guess I'll ask you this question. Do you think it's going to continue this year?
Are you saying as far as like just the protests in general, people taking the knee?
Yes, sir.
Policy?
Yes, sir.
I could say that I'm in a pretty tough predicament because while I do have admiration for the protests, I also love football. It's an exciting game to be a part of, and I think one of the more better ways to redirect the dialogue would be kind of talking about what Ambizi was just saying, is that a lot of times with the movements that we have, I feel like as a society currently, because of our technological change and our advancements, is that we are too much of a trendy culture.
Yes.
We don't necessarily, like, we want to connect and we like to be a part of a group, but our level of connection and engagement isn't the same as what we would have experienced in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and even in the 90s and early 2000s. We just want to belong to something, but we're not necessarily willing to do the extra steps. Like, it's so easy for me to pick up my phone right now, do a hashtag, hop on all my social media outlets within 5 minutes and feel like I've actually accomplished something. Mm-hmm. When in reality, we're not actually going out in the streets. We're not coming together as a community. We're not doing the things necessary to change the narrative. And I personally don't like to talk about the president. I don't have the time or the energy because that's just whatever.
Right.
But I think when we really come down and think about it, he represents the constituents that put him in the office.
Right.
He's furthering their particular agenda. And at the same time, we're not necessarily having as many levels of accountability as we should.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that's a great way to leave this, Money Marvin.